Hey everybody, it's Lynn Hayes here. I hope you're all doing well this week. Today is April 20th, 2020, and this is a review of the astrological influences that are coming up for the week. Over the next few months, I'm likely going to repeat myself quite a bit, which is probably okay. Not everybody is going to be watching every video. And there are some planetary configurations that are going to keep cropping up. And I'm sure I'll be having different thoughts and different impressions as we go along about what those are. So right now, the biggest planetary cycle is the conjunction of Jupiter to Pluto. We just had, that was, I think 2 weeks ago, was the exact alignment. But those two planets are going to be within about 3 degrees of each other for quite some time, at least the next 2 months. They will come back again in an exact conjunction in the middle of June. So Jupiter has to do with expansion, but more importantly, for our purposes today, it has to do with what we find, how we find meaning in life. Jupiter has to do with our shared ideals, our theologies, our philosophies. It also has to do with a lot of things like good luck and good fortune and publishing and the law. But for our purposes here today, which for my purpose, it's what can I tell you that will help you to lead a happier and more successful and more enlightened life, if I can be so bold as to say that. So Jupiter has to do with our development of our own theology. What gives our life meaning? What do we need to bring into our lives in order to feel like we have a sense of purpose? And when Jupiter aligns with Pluto, even if none of this other virus stuff was happening, there would be a realignment of our goals. Whenever there's any kind of big planetary cycle involving Pluto, there's a lot that's out of our control. Pluto is the planet of destruction and regeneration. I think of Pluto often as, in The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy was in the tornado and the tornado picked up her whole house and moved it, and you don't know where you're going to end up. You can't control it. There's nothing you can really do. And we're in a year right now where there's a lot of Pluto that's going on. We had Saturn conjunct Pluto, we had Jupiter conjunct Pluto, and those 3 planets, I'm going to do a video about this in the next week, but those 3 planets are going to be moving in tandem throughout really all of this year into January. And then we get into Saturn squaring Uranus. So, exciting times are here. So how are we going to live in these times? That's what we're looking at with these weekly videos. Obviously, a transit of Venus or Mercury is not going to change the coronavirus situation. And it's not going to make a very difficult situation, like if you've lost your job, a nice Venus transit isn't going to fix that probably. But these smaller, faster moving planetary cycles can give us a window where maybe we can see things a little more clearly. Maybe we'll have a little more optimism that we can bring into our lives. So that's what I'm going to try to be doing as we go through this next period. So right now, we are in a planetary environment where there's not one retrograde planet. That's extremely unusual. I think it happens something like 2% of the time. Very unusual. Pluto is going to turn retrograde, though, on the 25th of April, which is coming up in a few days. So Pluto is a very slow-moving planet from our perspective. It's the farthest one that I look at astrologically, and it moves very slowly. So when it retrogrades, it takes a long time to slow down. So it's been virtually stationary in the sky as we observe the planets. When they're about to turn retrograde, from our perspective, their movement slows down to a standstill. And while that planet is beaming its energy to us, which we experience particularly strongly if that planet is affecting our own personal chart. But generally, when a planet is stationary in the sky, as Pluto is for the next at least couple of weeks, its influence is very strong and very powerful. So the influence of Pluto is felt as intensity. There can be a lot of drama. There can be a lot of darkness. There can be an eruption of fear and panic. So we want to sort of watch for that and not get sucked into it, which is very difficult. But hopefully, we have the resources to be able to attempt to do that. There's a lot of panicky energy around us right now, and we don't want to completely ignore what's happening or pretend it's not happening, pretend it doesn't exist. That's not going to work. We have to observe it, but we have to try to maintain our equanimity. So I have some good news for you. What's going to help us with that is the new moon in Taurus. Taurus is the sign of equanimity. It has to do with peacefulness, a feeling of being at home on planet Earth. There's a love of the sensual pleasures of being on Earth, the food that we eat, the sounds that we hear, the tactile sense of fine fabrics and cozy, snuggly animals and all of those sorts of things that we enjoy because we live in a body. But most particularly, Taurus has to do with nature. It has to do with being in the environment of the earth. So that, I feel, is the most grounding thing that we can do right now during this COVID-19 period, is really ground ourselves into the earth. And many of you I know are in apartments, possibly in New York City, where you don't have very much nature. But if you can even just bring a plant into your world, whatever you can do to bring some nature into your environment, that's going to help us to ground and reconnect with our true purpose and our true sense of being integrated with our incarnation on the earth. The other thing I want to say about that particular idea is the Ceres, which, people say a lot of different things about Ceres, but one of the things that I have felt and have experienced with Ceres is that it has a lot to do with how we feel about being in a body, how well we take care of our bodies, how well we take care of this body that is our supposed temple on planet Earth in this journey. And Ceres is changing signs this week. It's going to move into Pisces on the 23rd, and it'll be in Pisces until February 2021. So our sense of well-being, which is what we really need at these times, is going to come through letting go of our preconceived ideas. Pisces is all about letting go of what we think our reality is and just tuning in to something that's greater than ourselves, to a sense of bliss that happens when we can let go of all of our individual fears and needs and complaints and, I don't like the way you did this, and to just sort of learn to go with the flow. With the situation in the world today, this is really all that we can do. We have to vote in November, but other than that, we have to accept our limitations in what can be done and learn how to try to control the tendency to worry about things that are out of our domain. Ceres and Pisces, I think, will really help that. So the new moon in Taurus, new moons are a time of new beginnings. And the new moon in Taurus can give us an opportunity to kind of let go of a lot of the worries and the fears and the arguments and the angers and the judgments and the grudges that we've been holding, and move into a state of serenity. The new moon, though, is triggered by Saturn. There's a square from Saturn to the new moon. So there is a need to build some kind of structure around that, to make a point of starting this new beginning. So any kind of new moon experience is usually amplified by some sort of ritual, some sort of intention. So what do you want your intention to be right now? What is it that you want to let go from the past? What is it that you want to bring into the future, especially as it deals with your sense of peace and equanimity? So we've talked about Pluto stationary. The other thing that I just want to mention is that the day that Pluto turns retrograde, Mercury, which is in Aries right now, is going to form a square to Pluto. So between the 23rd or so, so right after the new moon until the 26th, so there's about 3 days there, that could be very potent, very intense. Mercury in Aries is very quick to anger, has a lot of sharp barbs. They've been flying around my house today. So we're trying to bring that more into a Taurus Pisces kind of calmness. But when Mercury in Aries forms a square to Pluto, it can be pretty intense. And since we're all kind of locked up together, that would be a really good time to bring some movement into your life. If that's going for a walk, or if that's, moving away from a situation that might be creating some intensity until everybody has a chance to settle down, that would be a good thing. On the 27th, Mercury moves into Taurus, and then things are going to start to settle down. They're not going to be so many barbs and fiery explosions of words. So I think that's about all that I have to say for this week. I do have some ideas for some other videos. I want to do a video about the summer of retrogrades and what that means with some visual aids that I've prepared. And some other things. We're going to have the lunar nodes, the gateways to the past and future are changing signs. That's a pretty big deal. But if you have any questions or anything in particular that you would like me to cover, please leave that information in the comments. I want to thank you very much for joining me. In the description box, I'll have links to my blog and also to my Facebook page, where I post daily updates of what the planets are doing for that day, little forecasts, little tidbits of what the day is going to be like. So thank you again for joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful week.